Back in March of 2021, we bought a 2-acre homestead. It had been abandoned for almost a decade and neglected for even longer. We thought about tearing it down and starting anew. Then, we decided we could breathe new life into this old home. First, I made a list of everything that needed to be done. Then, I put them in order from first to last. Some tough choices had to be made. The first of which was a very mature maple tree sitting in our backyard. Building a new home would have most likely meant that it could have remained standing. Rescuing the current home meant it had to come down. Its proximity to the house and our septic tank made it too big of a hazard. So I went out, brought in a couple of companies, got some quotes for its removal. The one I went with was a local company for $3,000. Normally, trees that size, I like to leave alone. But sometimes they just get themselves into positions where they just can't be left there. And that is the problem that you run into a lot of times with these neglected properties, like such as the one that we purchased. Well, let me back that statement up. It's not just a problem with neglected properties. The thing with neglected properties is that they're neglected. And so trees like this become a problem and they're just never taken care of. So if someone lives in a house and they're taking care of that house, you can see a problem like Steve coming up, and then you can take steps to either mitigate or remove it. Here, this property was abandoned for so long that this tree just became an issue. And unfortunately, he has too many problems right now, and he's actually splitting right here. And he's got a problem in the trunk. He's hollowed out right there. So Steve has to come down. Now, I am not one to Monday morning quarterback a situation, and so I'm certainly not going to do it here. A spoiler alert, everything works out just fine. However, the operation was not without its setbacks. So you can see they just set some pretension on there. There is a line that they've got attached to the tree. Now, you can see right there where that tree settled just a bit. And that would be the neighbor's yard, ladies and gentlemen. So that co-dominant part of the tree that I had showed you earlier, that's where that split. Luckily, though, there's nothing over there, and we've got some pretty cool neighbors. And they didn't really seem to care as long as, the tree was cut out and removed. As far as the damage to the fence along that side, that fence is actually mine. So, no skin off my nose. So you can see there as they're putting tension on that line, and as they take it off, you can see that tree settle back versus forward. So at this point, I think we had to wait about an hour for them to go and get this skid steer. They had brought in an excavator, and so that pre-tension line is actually connected to the excavator, and they're actually going to take it off of there and put it on that skid steer. So I think the skid steer actually helped out in that situation. If you back up the video and you play it slower, when the tree first starts to fall, you can see it going in one direction. And then I think he actually hit the gas on the skid steer and it actually pulled that tree off and away from the house. So it was a good call on where to put that skid steer. So coming up here, you're going to be able to see a dark spot on the trunk of that tree right there. That is actually where the co-dominant side of that tree was. And so the first split, the one that fell off into the neighbor's yard, it actually came down right there. And what that is, I think that's called a bark inclusion. And it was one of the reasons why we decided to take this tree down. It's because the bark inclusion areas on a tree actually become the weak spot on that tree. So if they split, they tend to split right on those areas. So if you have a tree that's next to your house and you see areas on it where it's bulging on the trunk, that is actually a danger sign. You may want to think about whether or not that tree is in a position to do any kind of damage to vehicles, houses, personal property of any type, yours or your neighbor's. Now, 20 years ago when that tree was probably a third of its size, you might have been able to cut that side of the tree off and it would have continued to live a happy life. But because it was allowed to grow so large and develop that large of a co-dominant trunk, it really needed to be taken down. Unless there's nothing around so that when it does split, and it will split sooner or later, when it does split, there's nothing around for it to actually damage. It's unfortunate. That was a magnificent looking tree. It had a wonderful canopy to it. It was just in the wrong spot. So this is the next day. Our contractor actually came out and he said that he'd help us out with a burn pile. This burn pile is not just Steve, the maple tree. So what's happened here is he's actually hauling away some of the larger pieces in his dump trailer. The limbs of the maple tree that were up to, I believe, 12 inches, he actually chipped in his chipper, and you can actually see in the wood pile in the very back there. But if the limbs or the branches were too small, they really couldn't go in the chipper all that well. They would just gum it up. And there was a lot of vines in the tree as well. And so he said, hey, can we just burn these in your backyard? I see that you've got a lot of other things that you probably need to burn as well. So why don't I just help you out, get all of that stuff, and we'll just make one big burn pile and get it all done with. And so I agreed to that, and that's what's happening here. So all of the stuff that he's grabbing now off to the right that I just moved the camera for is stuff that I actually cut down myself by going around the edges of our property and just cutting out all of the overgrowth. So we had a front hedge, took down a couple of trees. That's probably 5 trees sitting right there. I think we put all of the trees that we cut down up front in the back here. Also, there was a dogwood that I took out. That's probably back there as well. So there's just a lot of brush that needed to be taken care of, and this is a good way to do it. In our county that we reside, it actually costs money for each load of this yard waste stuff that you bring into the waste facility. So he was trying to keep the amount of material that he was taking to the waste material to like 1 truckload. I think it's like $500 a load is what it cost. So part of the $3,000 quote that we got was to remove Steve, chip, and leave us a pile of wood chips for which we will use for mulch and putting in low spots in the yard, and then grinding the stump. It did not include, he actually laid out 2 loads of hardpan because we plan on installing a driveway on the side of the house. So he actually laid out 2 loads of hardpan for us, no charge, and did this burn pile for us, no charge as well. So in the place of Steve, what I intend to do is actually do a pad, and then I'm probably going to build a workshop, and the driveway I'm going to extend back along the side of the house to just in front of my workshop. Those videos and a whole lot more are upcoming on this channel, so if this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and the bell notification so that you don't miss any of those videos. Wow. 6 feet? What? That's 6.5 feet? It was a shame to cut him down, wasn't it?
Yes. He's really, boy, it's a lot of really nice quality wood too.
Mm-hmm. Maple. You pay good money for that in the stores.
And here we just ripped ours out.
If I had the ability to process it, you know, but I don't.